There was no funeral, no big Hollywood service, no lines of black cars, and no public place for everyone to say goodbye when the king of late-night TV died. But in the quiet that followed, one name kept coming back over and over. The name of a person no one saw coming was strange. He tried to erase the memory of this ghost from his past. Who was this person? Why did their story keep coming back to haunt Johnny Carson in the last few years of his life? The man who had put America to bed for 30 years died on January 23, 2005. No one could argue that Johnny Carson was the best late-night host. He went peacefully at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. The stated cause was respiratory failure, which was caused by the emphysema he had been dealing with. He was 79 years old. Jeff Sotz, his nephew, put out a clear and strong message. He died surrounded by his family, who will miss him very much. There will be no service to remember them. It was shocking, but the choice was right on the money. It's hard to believe that Johnny Carson was so private for someone who performed every night for millions of people. His co-host and friend Dick Cavett once talked about how awkward Carson was around other people, and how hard it was for him to make small talk with a few fans outside the studio. Ed McMahon, who worked with him for 30 years and was his faithful assistant, once said, "Johnny was comfortable in front of 20 million people and completely uncomfortable in front of 20. He was known as the most private public figure who ever lived." In death, he finally had the peace he had always wanted. His body was burned, and his wife, Alexis Moss, got the ashes. There would be no public event or place for his famous co-workers and friends to get together and tell stories. There were only a few people present when the man whose last show was seen by an amazing 50 million people died. The whole world mourned in its own unique ways. Honors came in from the top levels of government. President George W. Bush said he was a steady and comforting power. Jay Leno, who took over The Tonight Show after him, called him the gold standard. The most moving tribute came from David Letterman, who Carson himself saw as his true heir. He said, "All of us who came after are pretenders. We will not see the likes of him again." Fans left flowers and notes on his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and at Johnny Carson Park, which is across the street from the NBC studios where he had worked for so long. But how could there be a guest if there wasn't a funeral? And in a life full of thousands of friends and a few strong enemies, hearing his name mentioned after he died would have really shocked everyone. The question is not who was there, but who wasn't there for so long. The surprise visitor wasn't someone who showed up that day. The ghost of a friendship and betrayal that were so strong that they shaped both of their lives for the rest of their days. It was about the person Johnny Carson could never forget. You have to know the beginning to know the end. People knew Joan Rivers as a comedian before she became famous. She had worked in city clubs in New York's Greenwich Village for years by the early 1960s, passing a hat that sometimes didn't even come back. To pay the bills, she had slept in her car and worked temp jobs. She had even been kicked out of the Jack Paar version of The Tonight Show after just one show. She had tried out 7 times for Johnny Carson's Tonight Show but failed each time. Many people in the business told her that her career was over in 1965, when she was only 31 years old. Then there was the night of February 17, 1965. It was an emergency booking that her boss set up as a favor since he also worked with Bill Cosby. Rivers thought it was her last chance when she walked out on stage, but an amazing thing happened. "It was one of those nights when everything works out perfectly," she said later. "The audience and I just clicked. She wasn't just funny, she was electric, and the one person who mattered the most saw it." When her show was over and she was sitting on the couch next to the host, Johnny Carson leaned in and said the words that would change her life forever. She was on national TV when he told her, "You're going to be a star." Rivers remembered looking behind her to see who he might be talking to. She said that the way they worked together on TV was magical. At that time, a bond was made. Carson did more than just let her off the hook. He fought for her and helped her. She would say that he gave me my job for years to come. After that night, Joan Rivers was always on The Tonight Show. Over the next 20 years, she showed up at almost 100 events. Their banter on air was famous. He was the cool, unflappable king, And she was the smart, funny court jester who could make him laugh so hard he cried. He really did believe in her. Johnny Carson was Rivers' very first famous guest on her short-lived daytime talk show in 1968. This was a huge show of support. It got bigger and bigger for her on the show. As early as 1981, she filled in as host when Carson was away on vacation. By 1983, she was officially named the show's regular guest host. There was a lot of trust in this role. She had the kingdom's keys while Johnny was away. In the eyes of the public and the business world, she was the queen in waiting. She had nothing but love for Carson. Afterward, she said that over the years, she had turned down many offers to host her own show because she wanted to stay with The Tonight Show. But this little thing changes everything. Even though they seemed friendly on TV, their relationship was mostly all business. Professional. It was there in front of the cameras and under the hot studio lights. Rivers wrote, "Our friendship existed entirely on camera in front of America. And even then, during the commercial breaks when the red light went off, we had nothing to say to each other." This wasn't because they didn't like each other. It was because Carson was famously cold. He was a man who put up walls around himself. They weren't close friends who confided in each other. It was a professional hierarchy. He was the king, the benefactor who had found her and given her a place in his court. This unspoken power dynamic is the key to understanding the brutal betrayal that was to come. By the mid-1980s, Joan Rivers' feet started to feel unstable. For years, she had been married to Carson. Things started to change when Carson signed a new 2-year deal with NBC in 1985, but Rivers was only given a 1-year deal. This was a clear sign to her, and she wrote, "It could only mean one thing." The powers weren't sure what would happen to me. Then the bigger blow. An NBC memo started going around with the names of comedians who might be able to replace Johnny when he retires for good. Rivers, who had spent more hours in that chair than anyone else except Johnny, thought her name would be at the top of the list. When she saw it, she was crushed. Her name wasn't on it at all. She came to a painful conclusion. A new network called Fox was getting ready to launch, and its executives, including Barry Diller, wanted to make a big splash. They approached Joan Rivers with an offer she couldn't refuse. Her own late-night talk show, The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers. The show would air in the same time slot directly opposite The Tonight Show, and the salary was a staggering $10 million, many times what she was making at NBC. Rivers had to make a terrible choice. She was loyal to Johnny, the man who had made her famous, but she felt disrespected and thrown away by the network he worked for. Her husband and she, Edgar Rosenberg, her manager, told her not to say anything to Carson until the contract with Fox was signed and finalized. His reasoning was based on cold, hard Hollywood logic. Other comedians who had been regulars on The Tonight Show and left to start competing shows were often immediately banned from appearing on Carson's program. If she told Johnny and then the Fox deal fell through for some reason, she could be left with nothing. Even worse, they both thought that the famously powerful Carson could make one quiet phone call and kill her deal before it even happened. She chose to stay quiet, which she would come to regret for the rest of her life. The news spread the weekend before the official announcement. What happened next depends on who you believe. When Joan Rivers told Johnny Carson about her new show, she was shocked that he heard it from someone else. She called him right away to explain. She said she finally got him on the phone and told him she was leaving to host her own show on Fox. He said nothing and hung up. She called back, thinking they must have been disconnected. He hung up on her a second time. That was it. They would never talk again. Johnny Carson's story was very different. He said that phone call never happened and that he learned about her new show from a press release, just like everyone else. He felt insulted and betrayed by the person he had supported for over 20 years. Why was his reaction so strong? Other male comedians had left to start their own shows, and while there may have been tension, Carson usually let them go. Rivers had a different theory, one that went deeper than just professional rivalry. She later wrote, "I think he really felt that because I was a woman, I was just his, that I wouldn't leave him. I believe it was a matter of, I found you. You're mine." As a woman, he didn't like that. I faced him. In Carson's world, a man who left to compete was driven. It was treason for a woman to leave. They disobeyed the king, so he would be very angry and hurt very badly. Johnny Carson was the most powerful person in TV, and he used all of his power to punish her. The first and most clear result was that she was kicked off The Tonight Show.